Thank you. Now, Charlie really owes me because when he asked me to speak, he did not say, get on the stage after a brilliant guy who will tell us about the meaning of life and talk about advertising. So not entirely fair, but I will see what I can do. Buenos días a todos. Me da mucho gusto estar con ustedes.
I'm even more happier to be in a festival that acknowledges and the ideas, the innovation, and the creativity of our colleagues throughout the region. And of course, a meeting that reflects the present power and the promise of the Latin American markets. As the professor said, we are at the beginning of something that can be an important period in the economic history of Latin America. And as our American friends say,
it's about time, right?
Even though we Latin Americans that have a lighter sensitivity will say something like, well, where was there? Okay, well, it was time.
It's weird to talk to an audience that is trilingual in a city that is bilingual and lives both in South and North America. And I know that the official language is Spanglish, so like my predecessor, I'll probably be going in and out. No matter what language you're speaking, I think the first thing I'm about to do here is going to seem rather stupid to everybody. You get on the stage after the most famous economists in the world. And the first slide you show your audience is an economic chart. And the point of it is not really, this is from our Magna research unit. And the point of it for me is Latin America is in green there. We all know that many things are lining up so that it is quite possible that we're looking at a very interesting period. For me, it's the combination of this slide and the fact that there continues to be a very strong correlation between the kind of economic growth we're looking at and measured ad-supported media, which creates a sort of a virtuous circle. And it creates a situation where if the performance is there and if it's there over time, what we're going to see, again, from our folks at Magna, is something really quite dramatic. And it's drawn up, it's gotten interpublic to a point where we've drawn the conclusion that Latin America will, for the foreseeable future, be the most dynamic media market in the world. Underneath that performance are some key themes, which I'm sure we're all familiar with. I just wanted to sort of set the table for everybody and touch a couple of them. Mobility comes to mind. We've got remarkable mobile household penetration. Population growth means that that's something that can continue. And as the phone becomes the web, that means that there's going to be a huge population that is going to be clamoring for content, and there are going to be a lot of eyeballs and a lot of consumer behavior that we can interact with. And there's also going to be disposable income to go against that. So you're looking at population that's going to grow in excess of other emerging markets, economic growth, and as I said, a lot of opportunity. If I look at pretty much across the board, if I look at search, for the last couple of years, it's been up in the 20% year on year. If you look at social media, which is another place that is clearly going to be defining the future of media, I thought that this was very interesting. Half of the 12 worldwide markets ranked by time spent on social networking sites are Latin American markets. And I put Orkut there. Brazil isn't even on that list, so when you consider about just the potential there as well. What we have is, to our mind, a truly contemporary media landscape. And what that means is a full range of fully developed media, but many of them increasingly digital, fragmentation and complexity. And complexity is an interesting word because we see complexity as opportunity. And I think that complexity is opportunity for everybody, for marketers. How do you engage with consumers in this new world? How do you, as my eminent, the gentleman who was up here, how do you share information with those people? For media owners, what are the formats? How do you migrate to these new technologies? And for those of us in marketing services, to what extent are we positioned to assist in that regard? Now, in a world that looks like that, increasingly, the one thing that we're also finding is that competing for consumers' attention means that content is going to be very, very key, and it's going to be at a premium for some time to come. So I did just a silly thing. I said to myself, Hollywood is still the content factory for the world. No disrespect intended to anybody, and I know that that's a relative term. But when I thought back to what the interaction between Hollywood and Latin America was or looked like, say when I was born. So that's getting to be a little while ago. So it was black and white when I was born. But when I thought about it, it was really sort of pathetic in that the best I could come up with was, you know, a couple of Cantinflas movies and these incredible stereotypes in which the openness that the single biggest content creator in the world had to the talent in the continent was really quite limited. We all know that Hollywood now is in Technicolor. It incorporates all forms of media, and it also has become a place where artists and talent from the region play a very, very significant part. Whether they're in front of the camera, whether they're behind the camera, whether it's the books that they've written or the screenplays that they have written that are going out to the world, whether it's in music, the influence on popular culture is dramatic. And to put that to the test, I actually took a quick look at a few things. Charlie actually allowed me to put that last bullet on the bottom there, a rival festival. But at the Cannes Film Festival, in the first 5 years of the last decade, films from Latin America won 2% of the prizes. In the Cannes Film Festival, in the second 5 years of the last decade, leading up to 2010, that number was 12%. At the Oscars, you see the numbers again. Over the last decade, 40+ nominees, 9 winners. I bet if I went back, or we went back, you know, a couple of decades ago, the numbers would have been fingers on one hand. And at the Creative Award show that I'm not allowed to name, a tripling of the awards won by Latin American agencies over the course of a decade. Now, turning from creation of content to consumption of content, and this is an eye chart, and I apologize for that, and nobody's, you know, it's really just to communicate the idea. Pricewaterhouse just released their forecast for media for the region, and so I think the red bars there are 2010, and the bars that are sort of coming off of that take you forward. And it's really quite remarkable when you consider that whether you are selling television advertising or you're looking at a television subscription model, whether you are in search and other forms, display, other forms of internet advertising down there on the left, or internet access, whether you're selling content, entertainment content of any kind, other than music, and we know that, you know, we don't talk about that, but other than music, this is really a unique opportunity and a very, very, I don't know that I've ever seen anything that really quite looks like that. The opportunities that this presents for multinational media companies are significant, and I just did a little thought experiment. I picked 3 very different models. So in Disney, I thought, well, content creator, more traditional, serving onto screens, film screens, things of that nature. DirecTV, more disruptive, much more recently arrived in the region. Facebook, you know, didn't know what it was 3 years ago. And the numbers, again, are really quite impressive. So you look at, you know, LatAm revenues that have doubled and a LatAm growth rate for Disney for the decade of 95%, I believe. For fun, I asked myself, when somebody took their kids to Cars in 2006, in Peru, in Chile, a donde sea, the total LatAm box office was $26 million, which was 5% of what the film did globally. And 5 years later, when the sequel came out, and I'm not even talking about licensing and all the other ways in which they monetize, when the sequel came out, you were looking at $64 million and 12% of the total. The subs on DirecTV are remarkable. The degree to which essentially, percent reach on the Facebook, I think 98%, somebody told me, of the people who have access to the internet in Chile are on Facebook. So clearly there's opportunity there. And there's no need for me to speak to or about the degree to which sophisticated, powerful Latin American media owners will clearly be focused on this. You're all here. You'll all be speaking at the conference. I don't want to step on anybody's lines, but I do think that we're all clearly seeing something that, as business people, is very, very attractive to us. In a nutshell, savvy consumers, they have global and local appetites. They have growing discretionary income. Sophisticated media owners at the local level who are going to leverage incumbency. They're going to embrace new media. That's one of the ways they're going to do that. And they're going to start looking increasingly for opportunities outside of their home markets. I don't remember seeing a telenovela in a hotel room in Czechoslovakia, but I know it's possible. And the implications are that there's going to be more partnership, more acquisition. We've become far more active at Interpublic in the region in terms of acquisitions. We've done 3 or 4 very interesting deals across the board. Creative agencies, digital agencies in Brazil. We're looking in Colombia. We're far more active in Chile and Argentina. For all of us, there's going to be an increased premium on having a distinctive brand and value proposition. And then there's this huge talent pool, and the question is, how do you tap into the talent pool? I don't like to sermonize. I hate lists of things you're supposed to do. As the gentleman before, 10 things to do in order to lose all that weight. So I'm just going to tell you about a couple of things that we're doing at Interpublic, and then obviously, would be happy to discuss during the course of the day. First, there is a really terrific digital talent pool in the region. And so I'm sure that you know at least one of these 2 names. These are 2 of our standalone digital agencies. RGA does amazing things. You can design your basketball shoe on a phone in Times Square. You can implant a little device into your shoe and it'll talk to your iPhone. They're really a terrific group of marketing technologists. Huge is a very fast growth agency that we've got in Brooklyn that takes companies' businesses online and has, is the timer working, by the way? Because there's no way there's still this much time, but great. Huge is an agency in Brooklyn that, as I said, helps companies, media companies, airlines, the Pepsi Refresh Project. And the thing that, as management teams, we and the leaders of those agencies did is that we realized that there is a remarkable pool of digital talent in Brazil. And so across both of those companies, and now particularly as we take those companies global, I would say that maybe 20% of the creative talent, the designers and the UI talent at both of these companies is Brazilian. And we found that, as I say, now that we're looking at Stockholm and we're looking at Mumbai, and they are the part of the talent base that we've got that's the most open to and the most interested in moving. Another one of our digital agencies is MRM. It's part of the McCann World Group. It's maybe one of the 5 largest digital networks. They're in 35 countries around the world. They've got thousands and thousands of employees. And the thing that we spent some time on with that management team and led us to an interesting conclusion is we were looking for a place to base a global digital production capability with MRM. And therefore, we were looking for a place where levels of education had to be at a certain point, where infrastructure had to be there, where design talent was available. And we actually based it in Buenos Aires. And we now have a group in Buenos Aires that turns out, I would say, 2, 3, 4 million digital ad units of various stripes and colors. And we could have put it anywhere in the world, but as I said, we see a very significant opportunity in digital, tapping into the talent in the market. Charlie alluded to the second thing that I'd like to just take you through quickly, which is that many of you deal with our media brands companies, and as of about 3 or 4 months ago, we reorganized the media brands business into what we call Geocommercial clusters. We thought that it was a way to reflect what's really going on in the markets and what our clients' needs truly are. So we grouped countries with common market dynamics so that they could share. One of the clusters is what we refer to as the developed market cluster. And what this really reflects, again, is that if you're in Brazil with the dynamism of the media environment and the level of work and the tool sets that are available, you have as much in common with your peers in India or in Germany, and it's really incumbent upon us then as a management to figure out how to tap into that. Similarly, in order to build scale and sort of network effects in some markets that we think are going to be very promising but aren't as developed, we created what we're calling an emerging markets cluster. And what that does is that it puts Colombia, Argentina in the room with Turkey, with the Philippines, where a lot of the dynamics are the same and where the kinds of issues that we're facing, the kinds of talent that we can exchange, we're finding, is a very, very promising model for us. The gentleman there, I don't know, Mauricio, no sé, I mean, I haven't seen Mauricio Sabogal, who many of you know, and who's actually the CEO of the Emerging Markets Cluster. I know that he's been very involved with the festival in the last few years, and so I would say that if you see him, ask him, because he'll be able to tell you how it's working. And then the last bit, it is working now, I feel better. And then the last thing that I just wanted to talk about is, that idea that the kind of creativity that you see in the region is something that you should be thinking about regardless of your business. How do you tap into that? How do you amplify and export that? And it might surprise people if I said to you that one of the best examples that we have of that is Lowe. Lowe is known by many as a global network. It is also known by many as a network with a British heritage, or maybe just better said, an insane British guy who started it, who's no longer with us. And it is clearly one of the most creative agencies around. It's a real powerhouse. But what very few people know is how strong the Latin involvement in Lowe's creative product is. So here is, pound for pound, possibly the most creative agency in the world. It's called Ponce Buenos Aires. That's Hernan Ponce in the middle. And when we approach problems for major companies, for a Unilever on its most important brands, we don't shy away from making an agency in a place where many would probably not want to acknowledge the strategic or the creative thinking that can come out of there. And Ponce's agency is the lead agency on 2 or 3 of Lowe's largest clients' most important brands. So we're talking about global mega brands being run from here and yielding work that looks like this.
When a cold chill begins to burn at your very soul, that's the sweet touch of love. Oh, when just a drop of a name begins to sting your very toe, that's the sweet touch of love. Oh yes it is. Just the thought of not seeing you would blow my mind. Oh, that's the sweet touch of love. Oh yes it is. I was about to give up, but you came just in time. With your sweet touch of love. Oh yes, oh yes.
When you consider the production values, the universality of the idea, and the fact that you've got something that ran in 50 or 60 markets around the world, and I doubt anybody would have guessed came from where it came from. Another thing that we've done at Lowe in recent times is we've got a terrific integrated agency in Bogota And the gentleman who runs it, Jose Miguel Sokolov, is actually the worldwide creative head of Lowe's. So they've got a sort of a grouping of 6 or 8 senior creative directors, and they've got a president of the creative council. And the bet that we, again, as a management team made is that tapping into what's happening in this part of the world would amplify the global network. And tonight, Juan Miguel actually in New York is winning an award for something that is really interesting because it's almost at the opposite extreme of what I just showed you. It's an incredibly powerful idea. It's a really, really terrific sort of strategic insight. You're going to hate the fact that the media was free, but nonetheless, and it's also just a very moving thing. So let me just show you some of what they're doing there.
Esperamos que llevándole este mensaje de Navidad a la guerrilla los invite a la desmovilización.
And most recently, we actually set up an agency in Madrid, which we're calling Low Latina. And at this point, we've got 70 creative people from 15 countries in Latin America, as well as other parts of the world. And we're, again, trying to just find platforms to draw the talent and to take advantage of what's going on here. I guess I'm just going to leave you with 3 very, very quick thoughts. En América Latina, en día actual, tenemos economías fuertes, una industria mediática desarrollada, bueno, cultura que es verdadera fuente de creación al nivel mundial y se va a poner muy, muy, muy interesante. Que pasen un buen congreso y gracias.